A sword can kill a person, but an idea? That's supposed to be fireproof. So how do you kill an idea? Simple, you don't. You just erase every single memory that had ever existed. For thousands of years, the best way to destroy a people wasn't to conquer their armies, but to burn their history. This is the story of the world's oldest delete button and the empires that were not afraid to use it. Losing a book is a tragedy. Losing a library is like losing a piece of our collective soul. It's an act of cultural vandalism so profound, we actually have a word for it. Biblioclasm, the deliberate destruction of books. The most famous, almost mythical example is the Great Library of Alexandria. For centuries it was the intellectual sun of the known world, a place where all the knowledge of ancient civilizations was gathered. Its slow, painful death over centuries, from fires, neglect, and political turmoil, has come to symbolize the ultimate loss of knowledge. Historians still debate exactly how it all went down and how much was lost. But the idea of Alexandria still haunts us. It represents a ghost library, full of scrolls we can never read and answers we can never know. But the story of Alexandria, as powerful as it is, isn't a one-off. It's a recurring chapter in the human story. The urge to control the present by wiping out the past is a dark, but very human impulse. And the most powerful tool for this has always been fire. It's fast, it's absolute, and its message is terrifyingly clear. What was once written is now ash. To understand this impulse, we're going to travel across empires and ideologies to see how the exact same tactic was used by an ancient emperor in China, a zealous Spanish friar in the New World, and a totalitarian regime in the heart of modern Europe. Each one believed that to build their new world, the old one had to be permanently deleted. Tonadurser. Section 1. The First Emperor's Bonfire. Our first stop is 3rd century B.C. China, in a land freshly and brutally unified. The man who did it was an emperor of unparalleled ambition, Qin Shi Huang. You probably know him for the silent terracotta army built to guard his tomb, but his living legacy was all about control. After a lifetime of war, the first emperor faced a new kind of enemy. Not soldiers with spears, but scholars with scrolls. China at the time was buzzing with different philosophies known as the 100 Schools of Thought. Confucianists, Taoists, and others were all debating how to live, how to govern, and the nature of the universe. For an emperor obsessed with absolute power, this wasn't diversity, it was a threat. Dissenting ideas were a cancer. His chancellor, Li Si, a man who believed in the absolute power of the state, saw the danger. He warned the emperor that scholars were using stories from the past to criticize the present. Their love for old dynasties and different ideas was undermining the emperor's authority. The solution he came up with was simple and horrifying. In 213 BC, Qin Shi Huang ordered that all books of history, poetry, and philosophy be collected and burned. The only books spared were practical manuals on farming, medicine, and divination, plus the official history of the Qin state. Anyone caught talking about the forbidden books would be publicly executed. Anyone who didn't turn over their copies would get it even worse. The goal was to create an intellectual vacuum. By erasing all other histories and ideas, the emperor would make his rule the only reality imaginable. It was a complete reboot of Chinese culture, with the Qin dynasty as the new and only operating system. The story, written down a century later by the historian Sima Qian, gets even darker. A year after the book burning, in 212 BC, the emperor was supposedly furious with a group of alchemists who failed to find him an elixir of immortality. In a rage, he ordered an investigation of the capital's scholars. The legend says that around 460 of them were executed by being buried alive in a common pit. Now, modern historians think the buried alive part might be a bit of propaganda cooked up by later scholars to make the Qin emperor look bad, but there's no doubt he had scholars killed, and he absolutely burned the books. It was one of the first and most infamous state-sponsored attempts in history to hit delete on the past. The loss was immense. Even though some books were hidden and others were kept in the imperial library, many of those were destroyed in the fires when the dynasty collapsed. Countless philosophical texts and the entire histories of whole kingdoms vanished, leaving a massive hole in our understanding of ancient Chinese thought. The ashes of the Maya. Forward nearly 2,000 years and half a world away. Another bonfire is lit, this one fueled by religious conviction. We're in the Yucatan Peninsula in the 16th century, home to the descendants of the Maya civilization. Their great cities had been swallowed by the jungle, but their culture was still alive. They had one of the most advanced writing systems in the ancient Americas, and their knowledge was kept in beautiful, screen-folded books made from fig bark paper. The Maya codices. Forward nearly 2,000 years and half a world away. Another bonfire is lit, this one fueled by religious conviction. We're in the Yucatan Peninsula in the 16th century, home to the descendants of the Maya civilization. Their great cities had been swallowed by the jungle, but their culture was still alive. They had one of the most advanced writing systems in the ancient Americas, and their knowledge was kept in beautiful, screen-folded books made from fig bark paper, the Maya codices. Fast. Forward nearly 2,000 years and half a world away. Another bonfire is lit, this one fueled by religious conviction. We're in the Yucatan Peninsula in the 16th century, home to the descendants of the Maya civilization. Their great cities had been swallowed by the jungle, but their culture was still alive. They had one of the most advanced writing systems in the ancient Americas, and their knowledge was kept in beautiful, screen-folded books made from fig bark paper, the Maya codices. These codices were treasure troves of wisdom. They held precise astronomical charts, calendars that tracked time with stunning accuracy, prophecies, myths, and the histories of their kings and gods. They were the memory of the Maya people. Then the Spanish arrived. With them came Franciscan friars, whose job was to convert the native people to Catholicism. One of these friars was Diego de Landa. When he got to the Yucatan in 1549, he was actually a keen observer, learning the Maya language and their customs, but his curiosity was soon swallowed by his fanatical zeal. When he found out that many of his converts were still practicing their old religion in secret, his mission turned into a brutal inquisition. To Landa, the Maya codices weren't the records of a great civilization, they were tools of the devil. He later wrote, with a chilling lack of regret, "We found a large number of books in these characters, and, as they contained nothing in which were not to be seen as superstition and lies of the devil, we burned them all, which they, the Maya, regretted to an amazing degree, and which caused them much affliction." This all came to a head on July 12, 1562, in the town of Mani. In a public ceremony, Landa ordered all the codices he could find to be thrown into a massive bonfire. He also had some 5,000 religious statues and other sacred objects destroyed. The Maya people could only watch as centuries of their heritage, their connection to their ancestors, and their understanding of the cosmos went up in smoke. The scale of the loss is staggering. Scholars estimate there were once thousands of these Maya books. Today, only 4 are known to have survived, likely because they were sent to Europe as oddities before Landa started his campaign. Those 4 books give us just a tiny peek into the brilliant world of the Maya. The rest, their histories, their stories, their science, is gone. And here's the bizarre twist. Diego de Landa himself later wrote a book, Relación de las Cosas de Yucatán, detailing Maya life. That book is now one of our most important sources for understanding the very culture he tried to destroy. It's a strange paradox. Almost everything we know about the Maya comes from the man who burned almost all of their knowledge. His fire didn't just destroy paper, it severed a people's connection to their own past. An act of erasure so complete we're still trying to piece together the fragments left in the ashes. The flames of ideology. Our final story brings us to the 20th century, proving this isn't just ancient history. On the night of May 10, 1933, just a few months after Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, the streets of 34 university towns were filled with torchlit parades. These weren't celebrations. They were funeral processions for ideas. Led by the Nazi-run German Student Union, this nationwide campaign was called the Action Against the Un-German Spirit. In Berlin, about 40,000 people gathered to watch students and SA stormtroopers throw tens of thousands of books onto a giant bonfire. The whole thing was a massive propaganda spectacle, broadcast live on the radio for the nation to hear. As the flames shot into the sky, propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels gave a speech, declaring, "The era of extreme Jewish intellectualism is now at an end." the future German man will not just be a man of books, but a man of character. This was biblioclasm as a dark ritual. As they threw books into the fire, students shouted ceremonial fire oaths, denouncing specific authors and ideas. They burned the works of Jewish thinkers like Albert Einstein and Sigmund Freud. They burned the books of their political opponents, like Karl Marx. They burned pacifist novels like All Quiet on the Western Front, and books by Americans like Ernest Hemingway and Helen Keller, whose advocacy was at odds with Nazi ideology. In Berlin alone, more than 25,000 books were turned to ash. The Nazi book burnings were more than just censorship. They were a symbolic cleansing. The fire was meant to purify the German spirit of anything foreign or decadent. It was a public declaration that the intellectual freedom of the Weimar Republic was over. A new era was dawning, defined not by reason and debate, but by a single, brutal ideology. Helen Keller, whose own books were in those fires, wrote a defiant open letter to the students of Germany. "History has taught you nothing if you think you can kill ideas," she wrote. "Tyrants have tried to do that often before, and the ideas have risen up in their might and destroyed them." But maybe the most chilling response came from a ghost. One of the authors whose books were burned that night was the 19th century German Jewish poet Heinrich Heine. A century earlier, in a play, he had written a line that would become a terrifying prophecy for the 20th century. "Where they burn books, they will, in the end, also burn people." The bonfires of 1933 were a warning shot. They were a symbolic act that cleared the way for the very real violence to come. It was deleting memory as a declaration of intent. These stories are a powerful reminder of just how fragile our connection to the past really is. And the fight to preserve knowledge is far from over. If you believe these stories need to be told, subscribe to the channel and join the conversation below. What other moments of historical erasure do you think the world needs to know about? From Qin Shi Huang's imperial court to the public squares of Nazi Germany, the pattern is eerily the same. Fire is the ultimate weapon of the autocrat, the zealot, and the ideologue. It's a weapon aimed not at the body but at the mind. It doesn't just destroy books. It destroys the possibility of dissent, the memory of other ways of life, and the very identity of a people. And this is not just history. In 1992, during the siege of Sarajevo, Serbian forces deliberately shelled the National Library of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Over 2 million books and documents were incinerated, a targeted attack on Bosnia's multicultural history. It was an act of memoricide, the killing of memory designed to erase the very evidence that different peoples had ever lived together in peace. Today, our libraries are becoming digital, our knowledge stored on servers and in the cloud. We like to think this makes it safer, that data is harder to burn than paper. But this new library has its own vulnerabilities. It can be wiped with a keystroke, corrupted, or just lost to decaying hardware. The delete button has changed, but the impulse to press it hasn't gone away. The ashes of these libraries teach us a vital lesson. Knowledge isn't a guarantee. It's a treasure that has to be actively protected, curated, and fought for. Every book saved, every archive preserved, every story told is an act of defiance against the fire. It's a declaration that our collective memory is not for sale, and it will not be erased. Because while a sword can kill a person, and fire can turn a book to ash, an idea, once it's been shared, might just be the most resilient thing in the world.